a computer is the smartest dumb thing you will ever work with.
Hello, everyone. If you're in virtually or if you're in the adjacent room, this is our speaker, our next speaker, Cameron Nash. He and I went to college together, had a lot of fun together. I've been introducing you by saying that we played Frisbee and soccer together, and so that's been fun to reflect back on and think about those fun times. First question, how do you say the name of your company?
So the company I work for is called Sogeti USA. They did a lot of merger stuff, so they say Capgemini more often, but they know both, so they dance around with it.
Okay, Sogeti. So an IT associate consultant at Sogeti, and he will be speaking to us about his experiences, things like that. But the question that sort of got this whole welcoming train going is, you were a teacher for a little bit, right?
I was. Oh, yeah.
So you graduated from Purdue in math and became a teacher in math. So
Yes.
What was that journey like?
So the situation revolving becoming a teacher was kind of one that was a surprise for the most part. The Hammond School City District in Northwest Indiana, they needed a math teacher in one of the middle schools. And they were prepared to give me an emergency teaching license in order to teach the middle schoolers there. There was no training beyond the required CPR training, any medical stuff like that. But actually getting in to teach those middle schoolers was a pretty quick process, since they were in the middle of their semester and they needed help with their test scores and stuff. So they let me in and they let me work with the kids for a bit, which is super nice.
So you came in as a teacher or like a helper? Like, did you have your own classroom? Did you have your own preps?
Yes. So they had me assigned to in a, I guess you can kind of just a group or a team of teachers, and what they primarily did was they helped me to understand all the different concepts beyond just math within teaching, and being able to relate better to the students, and to be able to have better classroom management and things along that line, in order to facilitate a better teaching environment for the kids.
Right. So I actually have an emergency teaching permit as well currently. I
Nice.
did engineering for a little bit and then decided to become a teacher. And so I know the route that you're describing well. And then, yes, having all those conversations about classroom management, things like that. But now you are with Sogeti. So describe the transition, please, but also like why did you land on the role that you did?
So the transition was a unique one. In terms of the teaching itself, what I ended up doing was switching over from being a primarily middle school teacher to a substitute teacher for all the grade levels. So I spent the whatever remainder of that emergency license for that school year subbing for classes K through 12, essentially. After that, I was going to go to grad school for math, and got the thought process in my head one night that I wanted to try computer science. I had gotten a minor in computer science at Purdue, and I had considered going into it in the past, but I always thought that it was above, like over my head in a sense. But my mom's old coworker actually had a job with Sogeti, and he recommended that I give it a shot and try to apply there. And Sogeti was looking for people. They're still actually looking for more people too, which is nice. But they were looking for people to help with a particular project with GE, which was specifically what they were looking to hire me on for. And even though I didn't have the programming experience that my coworkers or potential coworkers at the time would have had, they liked my resume and how I presented myself because they liked the fact that I could learn, how I could learn with everything. So they let me in and immediately started basically just kind of threw the whole house at me in terms of here's all the languages you need to know. Here's all the frameworks. You got 2 weeks before the assignment starts. So we hit the ground running.
Yeah,
It was
that
good.
is intense. I feel like that's a quick turnaround.
Oh, it was, yeah. But definitely worth it, but also a very insightful time period because it showed that I guess how important it was that we need to be able to learn when it comes to the work environment. Primarily because I didn't know probably about 80 to 85% of the stuff that I needed to know. But because I was willing to learn, they said, get him in, you can do it. And rather than worrying about me needing training, they gave me all the stuff and I dug in to pick it up. And it worked out.
So you bring in a couple of things. One, I want to talk about so your presentation during the interview, we actually had an advisory. So instead of like a homeroom or like a free period, we have advisories. So, my advisory is freshman class, and the topic was how to get and keep a job. And so interviewing was one of those things. And so I want you to sort of talk about what presentation means for you and in that framework. But I also want to talk about this 85% unknown part that you talk about. I think a lot of times, especially maybe in the computer science world, there's a lot of imposter syndrome in the sense that, this is new stuff pretty much every year. You're getting new languages, new versions to each thing. So I feel like, 2-3 years would be scared to admit, even then, that I did not know 85% of the job that you hired me for. So how did you get to feeling comfortable with being able to admit that, but also what resources did you have to pick up that 85%? So let's hit that 85% first, and then you can talk about the interview.
Okay. So in terms of that, what I found very helpful, at least for myself, was I would research just a ton of stuff. I guess the primary things that I did was I would look up every key term that I was given. So when I asked the advisor person that was sending me over to GE to do the work, when I asked him what I needed or what I needed to know, he said that I needed to know Angular. So I guess, yeah, the key terms that he used were Angular, Vue, SQL, Java, Spring, CSS, HTML, and I think he said maybe a little bit of PHP, and he basically gave me this laundry list, and I was terrifying, but at the same time, what I started to do was just pick any of them and just Google it and see what comes up. And rather than trying to memorize any particular thing, what I had tried to do was turn what I saw into something that I know or something that I can recognize. So in the case of all these different languages, the only language I had experience with was Java. And that was only in terms of making a hello world thing. So not very much of anything valuable. But what I did know through Java, I was able to kind of translate within all the other new things so that even if I did encounter something I didn't know in the other languages, I can pick out a keyword and just Google it and just search up everything. And that helped me a lot in terms of one, learning at least more and more about pieces of that, as well as just being willing to ask all the, I guess, quote unquote, obvious questions. Um, like, uh, how do you run the program, even, or asking someone, how do you build it? And by me asking those questions and being willing to look unintelligent, I was able to get enough information to not only learn how to build it, but then also learn how to make it build better and then make it build faster. And it, yeah, kind of just being willing to look dumb in a sense, just being
Yeah.
willing to look like I don't know anything.
Yeah. That is a big hurdle that I've also experienced in both teaching and engineering. You brought up a laundry list of languages, and for your first assignment, that's nuts. That's nuts. I've heard of maybe half of the list. But yeah, and through the continued derivations of Java, you were able to piece it all out. It's nuts. Truly incredible. Um, okay, let's get into the actual prepared list. So let's go back a little bit more so, and let's look at your high school experience. So like you were also a teacher, so you have that point of view of being able to look through the lens of a high schooler. But what did high school look like for you, and so what did you realize you missed out as you were a teacher? What did you realize that you weren't paying attention to?
Um, I would say the thing I kind of missed out on in high school was setting habits with everything. Um, my high school experience, I'd say it was pretty good, I think. It didn't cause too much trouble or anything, I hope.
Right.
Um, so with my time in high school, my classes and stuff, what I did initially was I kind of just took the easiest kind of classes I could. And when I had realized that my well, at the time, my friends were all trying to take more difficult classes and challenge themselves. And I had realized that I could also challenge myself. I started to take more of the honors and AP classes. With that, I I did the work and I would study and everything, but I never took the time to set up a good pattern with all of it. And in terms of, I guess, a good pattern, mainly, I, I guess the best way to kind of put it is time management and figuring out the best way that I personally learn about these different concepts. Since some people they like to take a ton of notes and highlight them and do a whole bunch of things like that. For me, I like to do practice work, and I didn't figure that out until college. And it would have been very nice to learn that in high school when I had the environment that was safe enough for me to learn it and practice it
Mhm.
more. Yeah.
A couple of students, mainly my female students, have realized that need in their methods of practice. Like I remember two clear examples, Jocelyn and Carly last year before COVID hit. They would come in and we were working on Ohm's law electrical principles, and they just wanted more of those sorts of practice environments. And obviously practice is not going to be graded because you did the homework. You just want the practice. And yeah, having that safety net is a huge benefit that I've seen in my students who take that route. Yeah. Any more habits or stories that you'd like to share for the impressionable youth at Jefferson High School?
I guess one other thing that I think that actually I'm currently learning more of that I think is extremely critical to start early on is getting used to the thought process of even a little bit counts when it comes to growth and improving in something. I guess the best example that I have is through my work assignments, even where we we have key services that we're trying to build out that thousands of people are going to be depending on within GE. And those key services, we could go for like big sections of it or the big whole service. But in the cases that come up, we always have to deal with the small ones. So maybe just data retrieval for one tiny little piece, something like that. In terms of applying that type of thing to regular life and kind of just our daily living, if we even spend maybe 15 minutes trying to build a better habit, that by itself is still a much better thing than maybe even you spending 30 minutes to an hour for 3 days trying to build it and then quitting after some period of time to not do it. And that all or nothing mindset tends to be the thing that stops people from being able to grow and learn about new stuff or figure out what they need to improve in themselves because they just kind of say, well, I don't do that thing, or I've never done it, so I don't need to try it, something like that. When actually, if you just try a little bit, then eventually those little bits add up. So,
Right.
yeah, that's a big one.
Um, so with you talking, I thought back to my sports practices, and if I remember right, you were a mid-distance track runner, or were you
Um,
longer distance?
sprints,
You were sprinting.
anything 400 and under.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay. So how did having an extracurricular sport affect high school and then again now in your professional career?
Hmm. Um, I would say it helped me with habits. Shoot. Yeah. So it helped me to um I guess to keep in mind the fact that I do, on one hand I do need to be healthy, and on the other hand I need to be consistent. Um it's I guess it's not talked about super often from just what I hear from general people, but even if you're not doing a particular sport, having your body in that type of shape or even just in a regular good functioning shape will allow you to work and do your job and other things better. And more easily, allow you to focus and do what you need to do.
Sure. I agree with that. So what did your, again, you graduated in math. I did not remember that you had actually minored in computer science, but with Purdue being so energy intensive, and also with a shift more toward computer science intensive these days, what did your Purdue experience look like? I think that a lot of students at Jeff think about Purdue as their engineering option. But there's math, there's creative writing, and accoladed professors at Purdue who are awarded in creative writing, poetry. So what did your Purdue experience look like when you had all of this engineering culture around you? Does that make sense?
Yeah. The professors at Purdue, and honestly, just professors just at a lot of schools in general are extremely fascinating, in the sense that they have a wealth of information to share. So I had the chance to meet some of the math professors just one on one to talk about their career choices and I guess what it's like to be a math professor. And they had some very insightful information that I never considered. I guess an example is professor. His name was Professor Laszlo, and he had told me that he would try probably around 200 super complicated math problems that he could make a research paper on, and he'd only succeed in two a year out of like either I don't know if he said 200 or 1,000, I don't know, but when he said two, it that struck me really, really hard. It's uh, nice to know that they're all human, just like I am, and just like everybody else.
No, that's not true. Teachers are robots.
But yeah, Purdue is known for its engineering, but what makes Purdue stand out to a lot of people in the world is the name itself and the accolades that come with it. A lot of people come to visit Purdue that have a wealth of information. And if you can take advantage of that and ask questions at the time, you learn about some fascinating stuff that you didn't know. I had a professor who I attended a random seminar and learned about supermassive black holes. I mean, it just all sorts of random things. That's super nice.
Yeah, I think that being around Purdue sort of makes students take it for granted. Um, I know I did early on in my high school career. All right, next. Okay, what does networking look like for you? So I think I got told by the vice principal at the time when I was in high school that getting a job is not so much what you know, it's who you know. And the word networking was always and always will be, I think, is a scary concept to me. But it's just because it's a different definition to something that you already do, like talking to people, meeting new people, and connecting with them in a much more social way. What does networking look like for you as a consultant, because you are a part of a company, but you're also going to different companies, and working on their problems. So what does that relationship look like? But then also, you can do your job a little bit easier in a remote coronavirus setting. So what does interacting with people look like for you in that regard?
Okay, so I'll start with kind of a networking point of view from it. So for me, at least in my job and what I what I've had the chance to see, in a lot of cases, although networking and like communicating with a lot of new people and getting to know a lot of people is important, I've I'm still learning it, thankfully. But what I'm starting to see more and more is that although it is important to know people that have influence, it's also important for them to know you. For the people that I work with, the original app that I was hired in, like pulled into GE on, uh, that app has gone through a lot of rockiness, and a lot of people, at least within the GE environment, they knew that the app wasn't doing super well, and they didn't expect much of our team in terms of improving it. Um, we did improve it a whole bunch, but not to the point that they had established a trust in it. And eventually they did shut our team down. Um, and I mean, later on, rebuild it. But in that kind of moment when they shut it down, it became clear how important it was that they knew the kind of work that I was putting forth, because they knew that I had learned enough about the app that I needed to be kept around so that I can help to guide the next team that's coming in. Um, and in the case of them, they just put me in the team completely to keep going.
Hmm.
But when it comes to networking and knowing people, a lot of people consider the fact that they need to know someone in order to get into a certain position of some kind. There is a massive level of merit to that in terms of I wouldn't have found my job if it wasn't for the recommendation that I got and then the word that he put in.
Mhm.
But um, along that same line, if I didn't perform at some sort of level, I would not have been able to keep the job. So, is it important to know people? Yes. But it's more important that you have more people willing and happy to talk about how good your work is and how much of a good work ethic you have, rather than just, I know 50 people that are all bosses of these companies.
Right. You bring up an interesting point. Like it's more important that they know that you can do the job than it is for, yeah, than it is for you to know any number of people. Absolutely. Yeah. Rocking. What else you got for me?
Um, I'd say beyond that, communication just in general with the people you in your work environment is key, in terms of your teammates and your managers and your any higher ups or pod leaders, anyone that's there. Um, Continuous communication with them also demonstrates a really good, I guess, aptitude or ability to work well with the team, which even if you're struggling in the work you're doing, that communication will still reflect well. And in my case, that communication allows me to also network beyond my team, because so and so knows so and so, and you talk to them, they could answer your question, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna deviate from this list of questions because being able to communicate your work is a super useful skill, not just in computer science, but in engineering, in medical industries, in teaching. Teaching is that's all it's it. That's all it is. It's communicating in an effective way so that your students get the material. I forgot the word material for a hot sec. So you, like I saw numerous times you tutoring Abby. And so you had the history of teaching within your college career before you even became a math teacher and a substitute and so on. And then communicating your work at your current company is an extension of that, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, how do you gain the ability, whether it's with a colleague or with a student or a mentee, how do you get the ability to effectively tutor, to effectively teach, to effectively mentor, to effectively communicate? Because I can insinuate that it's through experience. You just do it over and over again as a tutor in college, as a teacher, and then now you're at this level where communicating is super easy. Maybe not in the most sense, but it is easier than someone who is just jumping right into it. So how do I get my students to tutor one another is, I guess, the question.
That is a good question. So I would say a thing that really helps me with communicating more is just asking questions. And it's not always the case of, oh, I got something really good to say, or I got a really good question, something like that. It could just be, I think I know this answer and I want to clarify anyways. I guess with that, another part that I guess in hindsight, when I kind of think about my process of being able to communicate better over time, there was a big fear or anxiety component for me where I was afraid of looking like I didn't know what it was that I was asking or talking about, all of that. Or I was afraid that someone was going to prove me wrong, or I was going to be embarrassed, something like that. And I mean, I kind of went through different iterations of thought processes on that, but I would say that I guess at the end of the day, the main thing that I kind of tell myself a lot of times, if that comes up or if that fear, anxiety comes up, is what if they don't know, or what if they have something insightful that I need to know, or even just it's not like there's a script that they memorized of what I'm supposed to say. So I might as well give it a shot anyway. And if they correct me, well, then great. Now I know the right thing. Because I guess at the end of the day, even if talking to the person means they see you as less intelligent in some type of thing, or if it worst case scenario of you get judged for it, you ultimately still have acquired something out of it, which allows you to still grow and to still get done what you need to get done despite whatever it is. But it is hard. It is absolutely hard. So
Mhm.
I can't fault anyone for having trouble in that regard. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, shoot.
No, it was a good answer. It was off the cuff, and you answered it very well. All right. This is the last of my questions, and then we'll move on to student questions. How has your race or background affected any professional encounters, and if so, how? And so the question in extension is, if one of my students were to run into an issue in the future where they had a negative encounter, where they were discriminated professionally, what would be your advice, either based on experience or not?
I would say that my advice would be to have and maintain your boundaries, but also, I guess yeah, that's kind of the best way to put it. And also pick your battles in a sense. So there, and it's a case by case kind of basis when things come up. But it's important on multiple fronts that one, in a work setting or any kind of setting where the potential consequences of things going as bad as possible for I guess your whole life can put at a detriment. In those kinds of settings or situations, it's important that we are careful about how much escalation we do in a situation where something comes up or something that we don't like or we don't feel good about comes up or is brought up. At the same time, it's important to have and maintain boundaries with it. So in the work setting, and it's something actually that my whole team has to consistently keep an eye on. Um, when I guess when some of the higher up people get upset, they start trying to find everyone to blame and point fingers at and say like, oh, you're screwing up here, you're not credible here. All these like they have a surprisingly large list sometimes, and in those situations, it's important to be firm in terms of making sure that they know that that's not okay. Um, and I guess there are definitely situations where it would be better to approach the person on a one-on-one basis, but you have to play that out per case. But having those boundaries and being firm in your morals, your beliefs, your understandings, who you are, things like that. That's important, and um, no one should violate that. But getting in any kind of altercation that could result in jail time probably is not going to suit anybody. So
Right.
don't punch them, but if they're being a certain way, it's important either to be firm in terms of um, what to saying something along the lines of what you said, it's extremely disrespectful to me and I don't appreciate that. Or even as I guess the best advice that my mom gave me in terms of if things just keep escalating, um, leaving the situation completely. And in those cases, you can talk to them at a later time. You can leave it completely, and that's okay. If that's how it needs to be and you need to approach it later, that's okay. No sense in fighting or having this big, huge thing blow up over pride when you can have a reasonable conversation about what's going on after everyone cools down.
Right.
But you got to be careful because no one wants to get fired or go to jail.
Yeah. So the advice is something that I have heard, because so we share similar beliefs, but we don't share similar experiences. But those beliefs are both things that we have. Maintaining them, I think, is hard because we don't know what it looks like. Like you said, we could punch them in the face, but that is not a good idea. Being firm and having that conversation is one option. Escalating it is another. Escalating it to a higher up is another option. Walking away is another option, but that ability to have to see it as a case by case thing, and that not one response fits every case, is a difficult soft skill, right?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's brilliant advice. Thank you very much for that. All right, so my students have prepared questions. I put in the chat the URL for that. And let's see what we got. We'll start out with an easy one. What is your political stance on paper clips? Where would you rank them on a scale ranging from 1 to 10? Thank you, Jose. Appreciate that question.
Paper clips. It depends on what I'm using them for. If I'm using them for paper, that I would probably rank their importance at like a 3 or a 2. If they are magically flying and hitting their targets, I would rate them at an 8.
Okay. All right.
I won't discuss how they fly, but it's all right.
How would you describe your job to someone who doesn't know what it is?
I would describe my job as a programmer. I would tell them that those apps on their phone that they mess with, or the websites they go to, or whatever systems they rely on, the phone calls they make, stuff like that, the systems behind those are what I'm involved in. I help make all that communication possible.
Awesome. Is your job a good choice for someone who doesn't know what they want to do after high school? I think that is kind of a weird, not a weird, but I think like I would assume that the answer would be yes, but there's a big but, right?
Yeah.
So what you got?
So I would say that if you were to abstract it, the process or the action of programming is something that I would recommend anyone to do, just period. Programming in general forces you to change how you think. I guess the best example would be that a lot of times when we're discussing something or we're trying to explain something to someone or give them instructions, we assume there are things they know. In programming your computer, you can't assume anything. I'm sure people get told that a lot, but a computer is the smartest dumb thing you will ever work with.
Mm-hmm.
It will do exactly what you say and no more, no less.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't know what you want to do, I would say that rather than focusing on careers that you want or are thinking of, I would say start lower and focus on the hobbies or things that you like to do. For me, the reason why I got into programming was because I like video games and I like to play games, and I like difficult ones that force me to have to really think hard and try to solve puzzles and problems within it, even under pressure, anything like that. And that my joy of liking kind of that logic aspect, that problem solving part, helped me to see that, oh, there are things that I can do in the career field that involve problem solving um, and whatnot. And so you could take that route, or you can take the route of one of my old friends. He really likes playing games for more than me by a very long shot. And he decided to just become a game developer. So, I mean, if if it's difficult to figure out what you want to do, don't worry too much about it. Focus more on the things that you do like to do, even if you don't see a career in them initially. Um, to kind of give a bit more encouragement, my mom went to Purdue to study biomedical engineering. Um, she's too smart, insanely smart. Um, but her job, she's a data analyst. So I don't know the specifics, but she's digging into databases like nobody's business about just different things within the steel mills and stuff. Um, and when I asked her about that, she was like, yeah, it has nothing to do with what I graduated college for. She was like, there was no class that I took ever that would have got prepared me for that field. And I mean, it's all right.
Yeah.
Plus, people switch careers all the time. I was going to be a math professor. Now I'm programming. I mean, I didn't see it coming.
I find that the best changes are often ones that you don't see coming.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have this one be the last student question, and we'll try to squish the two. What is your greatest accomplishment in your profession / what is the coolest thing you've worked on? So that you can tell us.
Yeah, I am under a non-disclosure agreement, but that's all right. So I would say my biggest accomplishment as I guess as different as or unique as it sounds within work was putting together a well shoot almost all of them, but a lot of the key services within the app. There's one service where it's the thing in charge of making sure that a lot of the information is compliant with the laws within each country. And I had the privilege of being the one to build it, essentially, and to have to hear the logic and stuff for it over and over and over, and see the data model, and to be that one to translate it all over the place. And actually, we're very proud because it's functioning the way it's supposed to today. And we just finished running tests at work before this meeting. So
That's
it's
awesome.
super nice. But yeah, I would say that's a big accomplishment for me, for sure. Um, Although I try not to focus too much on them because I want to do more. But yeah,
Right.
I'm proud of that.
That's awesome, man. All right. So the final parting thoughts. Do you have any last advice for high schoolers in general?
um, I would say my best advice for high schoolers is, um, or final advice would, I would say I'd put it in two parts. One is make sure that you are the one making the final decision in what you want to do. Um, I know there are a lot of situations where, at least from what I've seen in the past, where students and just people in general just feel a lot of pressure to accomplish something big, or they feel that they have to go to college because they'll be the first generation. I forget what it's called, but the first generation person to complete college in their family, or maybe their whole family, they're all doctors, or they want to, it's something big that kind of puts pressure on them to do whatever it is that would make everyone proud. Um, if you decide that you don't want to do that, I would say that you have that final say, and that that's your choice, um, and that you should make sure that you decide to do what you're okay with doing. And the reason I say that is because you have to answer for that to yourself when you look in the mirror every day, that that choice or that decision you made. So if you like a certain career path, and um, you want to do that, or you like a certain topic in school, or a subject. I mean, some people feel ashamed that they want to go into psychology and other things like that, where actually it's a phenomenally big and amazing field that's super important. Um, just as a single example, there's nothing actually bad happening in psychology, but um, do that. I would say do that, because at the end of the day, if you are enjoying the work you're doing, if you are feeling good about the work you're doing, you are more likely to thrive and I guess contribute to the growth of whatever that is, as compared to someone who's regretting and hating their job, and thus being a detriment in some way to what they're doing. So actually, yeah, that's just the one main thing I want to say. Just make sure that you have that final say, because that's important. And um, if it's not what you want to do, then make sure you're pointing more towards what you want to do. And if you change your mind, that's okay. Go ahead and change your mind and go try something else. I considered 9 different majors before I got to math, so it's okay. You will get where you need to get.
Awesome. Well, Cameron, it's been awesome catching up with you, man. Glad to hear you're doing okay and that you're accomplishing so many amazing things. Grateful that you were with us. Yeah, take care.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this chance. I appreciate this. Good
Yeah,
to hear from you too. I like this. Yeah,
do this.
thank you.
Yep. Take care.
You too.